Welcome to RELOGIA, where all disciplines connect via art, sci, tech, trialogues. When you're connected, past, and dream about the future at the same time, you recreate them in the present as an experience. Moment after moment, you design your own perception about the world. Team 2, Experience Design, Art, Sci, Tech, Trialogue 3. On the art chair, Professor Gerald BAST, President of University of Applied Arts, Vienna, Austria.
Good afternoon. I think I will take a chair at the golden ratio of this stage. Although I know this is quite relative, it depends on the perspective you are looking at these chairs, which leads me to the very topic of my presentation. We live in a world that is characterized by uncertainty, ambiguity, and change. Liquid times, as the philosopher Zygmunt Bauman calls it. The technological revolution will massively affect social life, democracy, and labor. Within a generation, large parts of the now existing jobs will break away. We will have to redefine what is meant by human work. Climate change, migration, and the effects of aging will globally change societies and private life. Artificial intelligence, synthetic biology, genome editing, and quantum mechanics challenge the role of humankind in the universe. And all this will happen in a few decades. In fact, the development already has started. And sometimes I feel like living in the eye of a hurricane, because a lot of mighty people still are ignoring or playing down the dramatic situation we are facing. Never before in history, technological revolutions did change societies and economies so dramatically in such a short period of time and almost simultaneously on a global scale. The social, political, and economic realities are getting more and more complex, fluid, and unpredictable. An increasing number of factors that are tied together by a non-transparent relationship determine our reality. Nevertheless, politicians are promising stability and security by giving simple answers to complex topics. Promises that cannot be delivered. And this leads to a societal atmosphere of increasing anxiety and even aggression. Almost 100 years after the physician Werner Heisenberg published his uncertainty principle, most people are still used to argue along linear patterns of causalities. A is followed by B, leading to C, yes or no, true or false. 1 or 0. What you can see here are nerve cells from the human brain. This system is much more like a quantum system than an electrochemical system, even more than a digital system. The human brain consists of some 80 to 100 billion neurons. This is where information is stored. Each neuron forms about 1,000 connections to other neurons, amounting to more than 1 trillion connections. For our intellectual capacity, the quality and quantity of these non-linear, multi-layered, physiological links between the individual neurons is decisive. The links are decisive. The knowledge society presents a similar pattern. The links formed by the lines of communication between the various branches of knowledge determine the degree of effectiveness of the knowledge within a society. Without a sufficient number of functional, non-linear knowledge links, the high-rising towers of knowledge remain increasingly isolated and self-referencing. According to the World Economic Forum, the most important skills for living and working in the 21st century are complex problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity. It's not primarily about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, like a lot of people in a linear thinking mode are arguing. It's foremost about complex problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity. Creativity in the meaning of understanding abstraction and alienation, using unconventional contextualizations, applying intuition and imagination, working with ambiguity and uncertainty, taking new perspectives, and thinking in surprising alternatives. Creative methods, the very methods that artists apply in the exploration and production of art, creative methods become the central human cultural technique for living and surviving in the digital age, beyond the system of the arts. More than 2 centuries after the first industrial revolution, which changed almost all paradigms of economics, politics, education, we are again standing on societal and economic crossroads. The crucial question now is it possible to establish a creative revolution alongside the recent technological revolution? This creative revolution will not take place in museums and galleries. The creative revolution will affect people's life in a comprehensive, a holistic way. Creative methods infiltrating education, research, politics, and economics. Just like quantitative methods like statistics infiltrated economics and most of academia in the 1970s with quite questionable results. Humans will only have a chance to win the race against the machines if they focus on those areas where they are better than machines. Emotions, empathy, social intelligence, and creativity. It might sound paradoxical, but the recent technological revolution will increase the importance of creativity. Indeed, the 21st century, in the distant future, may be called the century of creativity, if mankind manages to survive this century. Once it was said, that's it, knowledge is power. And it was said with good reasons. Now, in times when every 20 seconds a peer-reviewed scientific paper is published, there is a new formula for the life and survival of humans in the coming decades. Creativity is power. No more the amount or depth of accumulated knowledge will generate power. The power lies in the ability to interpret and creatively link information and data. It's all about the synergetic and creative application of data and technology. The people from Cambridge Analytica who offered influencing elections by using artificial intelligence, successfully offered, gave us a revealing glimpse of this power. What is the mission of mankind in a world of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and biotechnological merge of man and machine? How much will the effects of global warming and global migration change physical as well as social landscapes? Will we succeed in redefining and creating new forms of human work when up to 50% of the now existing jobs will break away due to robotics and artificial intelligence? Which kind of social fabric is needed in an urbanized and increasingly aging society? These are not questions that could be answered either on the economic level or the technological or a philosophical level. These issues are of such great complexity that their multidimensional relationships hardly can be explored with single proven scientific methods. This was the reason why we at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna established a cutting-edge program 2 years ago. Crossdisciplinary Strategies, applied studies in art, science, philosophy, and global challenges. Sounds great, and it is great indeed. We're combining artistic methods and strategies with principles in genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, robotics, economic and political mechanisms, and global challenges. Of course, we do not aim to educate specialized experts in one of these fields, but we aim at educating people who are able to draw non-linear, non-obvious, unusual and surprising connecting lines between the single disciplines. Therefore, they need to understand the principles and mechanisms of these disciplines for being able to analyze and seriously estimate the potentials of cross-fertilization between the disciplines and between technology and creativity.
Today, our societies are facing global challenges in a world that is increasingly interconnected and is accelerating more and more.
How do we maintain economic growth at times of huge debt? And how to deal with global warming on a global scale?
How to diagnose and cure new infections and diseases?
How to support new ways of peaceful coexistence?
The mission of higher education today is to generate and disseminate cutting-edge knowledge for the benefit of our societies that are facing unprecedented challenges on a global scale.
We believe that education has to prepare people for living and working in a world marked by uncertainty, ambiguity, and change. We believe in a new kind of education, providing people who are able to bridge the islands of specializations, providing experts in synthesizing and not in fragmenting knowledge to meet the grand challenges of our times: climate change, aging societies, migration, poverty, and not the least, redefining the terms labor and employment. We need specialists in despecialization. The tremendous influence of the letterpress technology on modern societies was not due to technology. It was, and still is, the printed content which changed societies. The scientific and the creative content. Neither the electrical engineers nor the digital engineers changed the world by inventing and constructing radios, TV sets, and computers with internet access. The same situation we have now, if we are looking at the potential societal and economic power of artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, or quantum technology. In order to be effective in the 21st century, to remain relevant, science and art need to engage each other. Scientific methods and competencies have to be extended to artistic ones and vice versa. It is necessary to develop a common language, a basis of understanding, an openness towards the methods of the vis-a-vis and respect for each other. Working on the complex and potentially critical challenges of our society needs the alphabet of the arts as urgently as the alphabet of science. Maybe all this seems to be for you exceedingly idealistic, but let's be realistic. What is the alternative to all that? Thank you.
Dear audience, please join us at slide.do to ask your questions with hashtag RELOGIA01 and choose your favorite questions as well. Thank you.
On the science chair, Professor Kelly SNOOK, NASA Space Science, Music and Technology Research, CONCORDIA Project, University of Brighton, UK and USA.
Thank you, Svetlana, for putting me. I'm going to sit in the art chair because you can't go wrong with the golden ratio. So I'm just going to sit right here. I wanted to just start, and the way I usually start with. Do I have my slides? Maybe not. Do I have to go back? Can you go to the beginning of my presentation? I'm going to talk to you today about the project that I'm working on, that I've been working on now for the last roughly 18 years, first 15 of which were really just trying to solidify the idea enough in my head that I could even articulate the project. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of the journey that I've been through to get to where I am now with the project, and to help you just understand the motivations of the project, and to understand the sort of post-disciplinary nature of the project. It really is not... oh, hello, we're right in the middle of my presentation. Spoiler alert. Let me just point it at the thingy. There we go. Well, we go. So many slides. So we'll just start with, the name of the project is Concordia. It's Latin for harmonies. It's really mostly inspired by one particular individual. This is really very unreliable. There we are. These are some of my favorite musicians in history, who are mostly not known for their music, but who used music in very interesting ways in their scientific processes and in their creative processes while investigating reality. You can probably, I won't do the quiz today, but I usually quiz everyone to see if they know who all of these men and these fantastic mustaches belong to. But really, I want to talk mostly about Johannes Kepler, who's top and center in this photo, primarily because the project that I'm working on is this year celebrating the 400th anniversary of Kepler's work, in which he lays out, and I always have this book with me, even though it's very heavy, because in this book he lays out really the beginnings of modern astronomy, and he's known as one of the fathers of modern astronomy. And what people don't know usually is that he made these discoveries that he made about the way the universe works by using musical principles of harmony. And he was very, very motivated by harmony. But before I get into what that is, I'm going to talk to you about shaving the yak. This is an American expression called that I learned at MIT. It's called shaving a yak because when you have something central that you want to accomplish, some main task, before you can do that task, you have to do another task. And before you can do that task, you have to do another task. And by the time you're at the end of the chain of tasks that you have to do in order to accomplish your thing, you're shaving a yak. And so I'm going to talk about all the yaks that I've been shaving for the last 18 years to get to this point. Originally, I thought my life was going to be purely about music. From a very young age, that's me in the yellow, I was a musician. I played a number of different instruments. I did composition. I studied piano. But when it came to choosing what to do with my life, I was too afraid to do music. It was too uncertain. It required too much luck. It was too exposing of my inside world, and I didn't want my living to have to be conditioned on a creative process. I thought that would be really hard, and so instead I did aerospace engineering because that seemed like a very easy path. And so I spent 11 years in school, did a PhD in aerospace engineering, and I went to work for NASA, working on problems of science and technology development for planetary exploration. And so I became quite, at least familiar with the process of doing science, but really in my heart, I was still a musician. And so I was kind of doing both. I was not only working at NASA, but I realized that if I was going to make the music that was inside my head and inside my heart, I would have to learn the technology of making music in order to be able to make it put it out into the world. So I started learning music production. I taught myself music production. I figured if it's not rocket science. If I can do rocket science, I should be able to produce music. And so I started working kind of in these parallel paths of a creative and technological music path and a creative and technological science path. At some point, I was asked to give a talk in Japan about, actually a whole tour speaking in Japan, about the impact of science and space, especially space and space science and astronomy, on human consciousness, on our collective understanding of who we are as a species. And I was quite young at the time. This was 2001. And it was in the process of sitting in my imposter syndrome of why they asked me to speak of something so lofty, that I re-encountered the work of Johannes Kepler and the idea of the music of the spheres that had been around since the time of Pythagoras, or maybe even before then, that the universe and everything in it has an intelligible order, and a musical order, in fact, and harmonic properties that can be perceived by human sight and sound and human senses. And this was really, really exciting for me. And moreover, I encountered this idea that was fairly prevalent in Kepler's time about the nature of music and what music was for. So in this period of time, in the medieval Christian doctrine of Boethius, there were only 3 types of music, and music was not considered to be an art. Music was a science. It was part of the quadrivium, along with mathematics, arithmetic, astronomy, geometry, and music. Those were the 4 sciences. This, for me, was so exciting, just this idea that, in fact, the only audible kind of music of the 3 types of music that were believed to exist at the time, the music of the spheres, this idea of the intelligible order, the musica humana, the music of the human condition, the human spirit, the human body, and the relationship, the body to the divine. This was also not thought to be an audible music. There was only one kind of music that was audible, which was instrumental music and singing, and that was intended purely to mimic the first 2. So this idea that music was an investigative tool, this just set me really on fire. And I wanted to understand Kepler's work. I wanted to understand the music that drove him to make his scientific discoveries. I wanted to understand how did he use music to figure out how the planets moved. This is still so mysterious to me and so exciting that way back then, in 2001, I started trying to read his books. And it's so difficult and so impenetrable, even for a space science, somebody with a PhD in engineering. It was really, really difficult for me to understand. I now know that that was partly because the translations into English were wrong. So I was beating my head against the really bad translations of only part of his work. And so, but even when it's translated correctly, this is not the most intuitive way to present his ideas. It was the only way he had at the time. But I just wanted to hear this music. I wanted to, not only to hear it, but I wanted to be able to play it. And I wanted to be able to explore the world through sound. So I came back from those talks with this just burning desire to understand what Kepler meant about how if we use our ears and our eyes together, we are programmed to be able to recognize truth. Through our recognition of beauty and consonance and dissonance and patterns and pattern recognition, but not just through our eyes, also through our ears. That I could not let go of this idea. And even though I was working at NASA, and even though I was producing music records, really in the back of my mind for the last several decades, I've been trying to understand this idea. And I've been particularly inspired by Kepler's idea that the secret of the whole universe is in this music of the spheres. This is where the archetype of all of creation exists. And so I've just been kind of low-key working on this for a while, but in the last few years, I've really been ramping it up. And the main thing that I'm after is this challenge that Kepler issued, which is for modern musicians to follow after and to explore his ideas. And he thought, even if it takes 100 years, that's fine. And it's been 400 years exactly to this year. And I don't think we've done his work justice yet. We haven't gotten to the point where we could really hear what he was on about. I'm also very inspired by the teachings of my own faith, but the spiritual teachings, just as Kepler was motivated by spiritual teachings. There's a Baha'i prayer that talks about unraveling the secrets that are treasured up in the inmost reality of all created beings and making us to hear the hidden truths that are written and embedded in the heart of all that is. Just this idea that we can hear truth. This for me is so exciting and so intriguing and so vexing. How do we do that? We're not doing that right now with sound. We're treating music as if it's a toy. We're treating music as if it's just there for our entertainment. And in fact, yeah, you can see it makes me a little bit angry that we're throwing away this amazing investigative tool just to play with. And I knew what I wanted to understand was the way that the solar system moves, but not just like this, which is a traditional way, an orrery, a traditional way of looking at the solar system. If I look at this, I don't hear music. I don't see music. It's not obviously musical to me. So how do I instead create a model of the solar system that I can fly through, that's to scale, that's true, that's showing me the actual movements of the spheres, the movements of the spheres that Kepler discovered? NASA's solution to having too much information at the time when I left NASA, their solution to more and more and more data was just more and more screens. If you can get that information up, and then we can look at it all together, and then we can synthesize the information from that. And that's really not how it works, because after a couple of screens, your visual system just saturates, and you can no longer really process everything at once. But I think that you can get to that point of visual saturation and still have other channels of information available to you. So if we could learn how to encode information into sound in a way that our brains can decode, this gives us a whole new arena, just like Kepler said, for understanding our reality. And so I started to try and convince NASA that they should send me to the MIT Media Lab to learn how to do this, to learn how to take information and data and turn it into sound in a way that we could learn from. And in order to do that, I had to convince them that there was a reason to do that. And I had to think about what that reason was. And at first, when I was trying to make my case, I thought about science, because I was in this kind of overlap of technology and science and ideas, like philosophy. And I thought, well, that's actually not all of it. And at the time, I was thinking of music still as art. I don't think of music as art now, but I think at the time I was. And it took great courage to put into a NASA proposal an art thing, because at the time it wasn't very trendy. This was 2008. So, but I did, and I realized that the goal, really, the sweet spot of innovation is where all of these things are, like the boundaries fall away, and those false dichotomies of art and technology and science disappear, and they're actually, like other speakers have said so correctly, they're really the same thing. They're the same. They're the application of our creative capacity to problems and to ideas and to expression. And I started looking into the technology of this. I started to interact with the community of people who were taking mathematical equations and scientific equations and turning them into sound and making like mathematics explorable. Is that going to play? Can you play it? Hit the forward button. It's not really working. But this is a friend of mine who had sonified the Mandelbrot set, which is a popular mathematical equation. As you click in the different parts of the set, you can hear and see the mathematics expressed. And it got to the point where I could explore that just by I could close my eyes and know exactly where in the Mandelbrot set I was just by the sound I was hearing, and this was so exciting. And then I started to find other people who were working on this idea of immersing yourself in data and interacting with it. I started to work with people who were composing in 3D space with sound and with visuals, where the visuals and the sound actually were the parts of the same compositions, and where a composition was no longer a linear composition or fixed in space, but instead explorable by driving through an environment. And so my idea was just to, very close to out of time, to be able to interact with that data in an immersive way. So we started with Imogen Heap to develop the MeMu gloves, which I'm wearing right now, which are a tool for interacting with digital media in a way that is reproducible and very much like immersive and intuitive, an intuitive way of making music and controlling music and sound and lights and robots. I won't show the videos, but just end with this idea that if you can take data like this, which is the harmonic data of a solar system, and put it into an immersive environment and make that, give people agency for exploring, this is a whole new way of teaching, of learning, of creating, of understanding ourselves and understanding each other. And really at the root of the problems in the world is a failure to recognize our oneness. And so if we could build an instrument that allows you to explore realities, not just physical realities, but also emotional and spiritual realities, that this is really what we need right now to understand our oneness. So I think I'll just leave it there. I have a lot more if you want to talk to me about this Concordia project. It's really too much to talk about in 15 minutes. And we're just in the beginning stages now of developing the technology. But yes, please, I'll just go to the last slide that has my contact information. Fibonacci sequence, blah, blah, blah. Data sonification, gamification. I'm really now just massively moving through the big dream of building a cockpit to fly through the solar system. But I'm not going to play this either. Nope, I'm just going to come off the stage. But can I just quickly put my contact info, because I don't have any cards. Oh, it is playing. There we go. So thank you very much.
On the tech chair.
Dear audience, please join us at slide.do with the hashtag RELOGIA01, where you can ask your questions to the speakers and choose your favorite questions. Thank you.
On the tech chair, Professor Dr. HEIDRUN STOEGER, School Development and Evaluation, University of Regensburg, Germany.
No? Maybe the microphone now better? Okay, and now if I have my slides, then I will, great. So as you can see, my topic is a little bit different to the two presentations before mine. I will talk about research on STEM talent development, and as you can see, the A is in brackets still, which doesn't mean we don't want to integrate it, but so far in my chair, we are mainly doing research on STEM education. And Svetlana asked me to talk about different projects we are doing. So I have several research teams in my chair, and I picked 3 areas that might be interesting for you at that conference. So as you can see, we are doing studies with little children. We are also doing studies with university students, and I'll start with the field of with the field of kindergarten education. And it's not so much about education, but about understanding how several fields are related to each other. And one research group in my chair is doing studies on fine motor skills. So here you can see some fine motor skill tests. And there are various areas of fine motor skills, but more or less what we find is that fine motor skills are related to various aspects of cognitive development. So for example, fine motor skills predict, so when you measure fine motor skills with 3- or 4-year-old children, they predict later math achievements, for example, or cognitive abilities in IQ tests, also reading and writing competencies. And they predict them for a long time, so up to 10 years we can find relations between the two areas. And the first thing as a researcher, of course, we were thinking maybe they're kind of fake correlations. So maybe it's maturation. So fine motor skills develop and cognitive abilities develop, so that's why we find correlations. Or maybe it's that parents who foster fine motor skills in their children, they also foster mathematics abilities or support their children more. And so that's the reason why we find these correlations. But even if we statistically control for all these areas that might be responsible for these correlations that we find, we still find something. So there seems to be something more. And it's a very, very interesting topic actually, and I don't want to go into detail why vocabulary, for example, is related to fine motor skills. What might be most interesting for you here is, for example, we're looking into the mechanisms why fine motor skills are related to mathematics achievements, and there are various aspects when it comes to finger counting that mediate, for example, these relations. So if you're interested in that topic, I'm here today and tomorrow we can definitely talk about that, but I only want to give you a short idea about that kind of research because the other two fields are a little bit more related to what the most of you will do here, I think. So with students age 11 to 18, we're doing online mentoring. And what I will shortly present here is our Cyber Mentor program. It's an online mentoring program for girls in STEM. And the reason why the ministry in Germany funded that project, so it's actually a project that runs for 14 years now in Germany. And the reason is that we have a big problem in Germany. We have very few women in the field of STEM, or generally very few people who go into the field of STEM. And bringing women into the field would be one way to improve the situation. So that's why we're doing that project. And the goal is really to get girls motivated. So the participants are girls who are not very interested in the field yet, maybe don't know a lot about STEM at all at the moment. And as you can see, we have 800 girls every year from all over Germany. And every girl gets an individual mentor who works and discusses with the girls for at least 1 year on a weekly basis. They also work together in networks, so all the 1,600 participants can also communicate with each other. Just to give you an idea about our platform, we have personal pages, and that's one thing is they have to get to know each other, but what is even more important for us, every mentor describes her field of work in the field of STEM. So the mentors write what exactly they are doing and what exactly they like most about their job. So for example, if a girl is interested in computer technology, then the girl can read 120 profiles about computer technologists. We also have various communication tools like forums, chat rooms, and an internal mailing system to communicate with each other. And we have a lot of different kinds of STEM materials. Here you can see the Cyber News. It's an online journal that our team writes, but also the participants write manuscripts about articles about their research fields, for example, or if they're doing an internship somewhere. And we also we also have various resources because probably everybody of you knows a lot of mentoring programs, and what we know from meta-analysis, so studies that bring together research on mentoring, we also know that mentoring not always is effective, and sometimes it can even have negative effects. So if we really want to have positive effects in mentoring, we have to make sure that the mentors are trained, that they are supervised, and that we have adequate materials for mentors and mentees. And as I told you, I mean, the practical aspect is very important for us, and we love to do what we do, but research is our main field. And what we did during the first 3 years, we mainly did usability studies with our platform. And after we found out the platform works quite well, we started to do research on how well the mentoring works on our platform. And what we found was that they're interacting quite a lot. So you can imagine face-to-face is something different than online mentoring. And what we found was a decrease in communication after several weeks. So we are doing log file analysis. We just look how much do they write, how often do they log in, and so on. And it's just decreasing very much after several weeks. So they just don't know what to talk about anymore. Another big issue was that we didn't have as much networking on the platform as we would have wished. So here you can just see some very basic network analysis data. And of course, we were not happy with the results. So what we did, we brought together 3 mentors and 3 mentees in so-called mentoring communities, because we thought that might increase networking and also activity on the platform. And actually what happened, we had more communication and we also had more networking, exactly as we wished. So just to show you, oh, sorry. Now it's also spoiler alert. Can't go back anymore. Yeah. So, okay, here are the results. You see the lighter green line is how it was after we had a concept change. So the decrease or the decline in communication wasn't as steep anymore. And we also had more networking on our platform. So great, you could be happy, we weren't happy. Why weren't we happy? What we found was that one-on-one mentoring wasn't enough anymore, so they now were networking with others, but they didn't write so much to their mentors anymore. And what was even worse, the STEM communication was very low. So we did corpus linguistic studies, and we just looked at the percentage of STEM words on our platform. And what we found, they talked about everything. Justin Bieber was very hip at that moment. But they didn't talk about STEM anymore after not having an individual mentor. So what we did, we tried to do another conceptual change that you already had seen. So we brought back the diet. So we had that diet concept again. We had a clear responsibility of 1 mentor and 1 mentee, but we brought together 2 diets into a community of 4 people, because we thought that might increase the networking, but also the individual responsibility and the STEM communication. And we also introduced STEM phases. So in the first quarter of the year, they were just discussing how and why STEM is important in everyday life. So it was just discussions. The next quarter of the year, they worked on STEM projects in their domain. So for example, if they were mainly interested in physics, they did projects in physics. And after that, we had interdisciplinary projects on the platform. So several of these communities came together and worked on bigger interdisciplinary projects. And that actually worked very well, and that's why we're doing the concept like that since 2013. So that's how our research is fed into our mentoring. And of course, it's also very important to not only find out are they active, but is it really working? And to find out if it's really working, what we normally do, we compare our treatment group, so the girls, the 800 girls who participate, and we compare their developments with the waiting list control group. So do you know why we choose a waiting list control group? Just to give you an idea, how long do we, or how many students do we have to talk to in Germany to find 800 every year? What do you think? Does anybody want to guess? 20,000? Yeah, it's even worse, 75,000. So we have to talk to 75,000 girls to find 800 to participate in our program. Of course, it's a very special group of students who go into our program. If we want to find out if our program works or if it's just a very special group of students who go into our program, we need a waiting list control group that is as motivated and as committed as our group. So, and that's why we have, unfortunately, although it is a lot of work, one group of girls who stay in a waiting list control group for 1 year, and then after a year they're allowed into the program. And what we do, we compare various aspects in 3 measuring points. We have, for example, questionnaires and tests before the mentoring starts, half year after the mentoring started, and at the end of the first mentoring year. And what you can see here is a typical pattern. So the light green line is we have improvements for the participants, and that's about what we find for the waiting list control group. They either stays the same, but unfortunately very often they also decrease in their interest, for example, in their competencies and so on. So that are first very nice results, but you might say, okay, here, for example, it's intentions to major in a STEM field. If I ask a 12-year-old girl if she intends to major in a STEM field, that's not really a fair test. So, okay, I can say a lot in a questionnaire. So that's why we're also doing follow-up research several years after the participants participated in our program, and when they had real-life choices. And the very positive result is that 74% of our girls really go into the field of STEM. And what we are even more happy about is that most of them are not only participating for 1 year, but many of them stay for a long time. Some of them even are in our program for 14 years now and participated as a mentee for several years, like here Gisela, for example. She had first a mentor in math, then a mentor in physics, and then an IT person. And it seems the last was most convincing. So she's now, or she studied after that information technology, and she's now a mentor in our program since 2013. So that's one program we are doing in the field of STEM to bring girls into the field of STEM. And as I said, also it's difficult to find these girls. Oops. The goal is really to get them interested, because many of them are not very interested when they start in our program. Another program that we started 3 years ago is a worldwide mentoring program, and here the goal is different. It's not about getting students motivated or interested in the field, it's about creating excellence in STEM. And some of us already know us, so the program will be free for students, like the German program, by the way, is also free. And it will start in 2020, and we are in the preparation phase, so we are doing a lot of research for that project to create a proper platform for the mentoring. And it will be a long-term mentoring, so it will take up to 10 years for the students. It's funded by a foundation in the United Arab Emirates, by Hamdan Foundation, and they want to give it to the world as a present during the Expo next year. So we don't have research findings, we only have preparatory research so far, but To give you an idea what will happen in that program, we will have mentoring, and we will bring together students from all over the world. So our goal is really to find students in every country in the world, and we will give them the opportunity to get individual mentoring by the best match of mentor. And you'll get an idea about what kind of students and mentors we are talking. It's very different to the German-wide program. The global mentoring is for students at the age of about 16 years. And it will be long-term, so we will give mentoring to them till the end of their PhD or whatever level is reached after 10 years. We look for the most outstanding STEM achieving students in every country. So for that, we cooperate with institutions who nominate the students in their country, and very few students in every country can participate. The students also have to have tremendous motivation. They already have to be committed to really want to do mentoring for 10 years, and they also have to have kind of made a decision to really want to go into the field, and as the program will be in English, they have to have good command of English. Our mentors will be internationally recognized STEM experts, so the double M is for medical sciences, so we are also bringing in researchers from the field of medical sciences. They also will mentor or take time for about 30 minutes every week, and they also should at least commit to a long-term mentoring. Of course, it can change. Maybe the same student won't have the same mentor for 10 years, but at least they should be willing to do it for a longer time. And they should also be part of a longer network. So I have a favorite mentor sitting here in the first row, Kelly, if you're interested next year. Just to give you an idea what we are planning to do, we will have individualized mentoring, so a lot will be done by mentoring, of course. However, we also have to plan to have a global network of mentors and mentees, and especially as the students will be very interested in a very specialized field already, we hope by that global network to find at least some people who are working in the same field of research, so they can come together and work on projects online. And what we will do in our team, we will also support the mentoring process, and we'll try to plan individualized learning pathways for the students, because we want to be to concur with or to compete with other programs in their countries. What we really want to do is to bring together different offerings and to plan the best next learning step together with the mentors and mentees. And as in our Cyber Mentor program, we are also planning hardwired continuous research for the program while we are doing it, and we hope that the program will last much longer than 14 years, of course, and we are quite sure about that. So thank you very much for your attention.
Team 2, Experience Design, Art Sci Tech Trialogue 3.
Thank you to all those speakers. Now let's have the questions from the audience. The first question: how can we train humans to be creative? Or is this only possible in childhood? And then who will teach the professors?
I should. Yeah, that's a big question, and there's also a lot of research done on that, and of course I'm more working in the field of school education. what we find is that very often teaching is about learning contents and about reproducing knowledge in the way that is the standard way. So I think one very important aspect would be also when it comes to grading or praise or whatever, to allow for solutions that are not the standard solutions. Just to give you an example, when the big PISA studies came up, one shock that a lot of my colleagues had was, how do students lose points in mathematics in Germany? They lose points by not underlining the results twice. So these very, very narrow views of what is correct and what is not correct, I think is problematic when it comes to creativity. There are also cross-cultural studies that how teaching is done influences how creative students are in their solutions. And I think definitely there should be done something in teacher education already. I mean, there are ways to do that, especially in mathematics. I know a lot of colleagues who are working on how to support students to come up with many different solutions for the same mathematical question. And that, for example, would help a lot. But I think it's also not easy for the teachers because many of the teachers were taught in a very traditional way. So it's definitely a question of teacher training, and there are definitely experts who are working in that field. So, for example, a colleague in Israel, Rosa Leikin, is doing a lot of research on that topic. I'm not an expert, but I think there can definitely be, there's a lot of opportunities to change things here.
I really don't think we need to train humans to be creative. I think humans are creative. We just need to stop training them to suppress their creativity.
Yeah, that's maybe it.
Well, creativity is a word which is quite fluid or swampy. So a lot of people talk about creativity and other people use the same term meaning totally different things. So what I understand with the term creativity I mentioned in my statement, it's dealing with ambiguity and uncertainty, finding totally seemingly weird connections, deconstructing reality. This is a set of methods artists are working with. And this morning we heard about that we should start changing our total educational system as soon as possible, and we should start at the kindergarten. And I say we should start at all levels immediately, because we don't have time to begin at the kindergarten and then look if we come to the university 18 years or 15 years later. There are different ways to train people in creativity, and it's first of all the set of methods. Science has a certain, or has many, varying from the disciplines, sets of methodologies, and the same is the case in creativity. And what I would suggest is that in schools and also in universities, we should not put science, humanities, and creativity or the arts just aside each other. This wouldn't work. So I don't like very much the STEAM concept, having STEM and then adding a little bit of A from the arts, and getting providing a few art courses for students who are studying economics or science. We really have, and this is hard work, We really have to aim at infiltrating the methods to the vice versa fields. And I mentioned the example of statistics and quantitative methods. If we look back in the 1960s, 1970s, there began a movement when quantitative methods took over a lot of the academic fields. And you could not work properly in various disciplines without using quantitative methods. And what I am dreaming of is that now we start an area where you not only use quantitative methods, but also creative methods, looking at the opposite, deconstructing what you are seeing, and questioning seemingly realities. We are so secure about what we seem to prove. And if we hear from scientists that 90%, or let's say 85% of the existing matter in the whole universe is not known. We know that there is a lot, that there are 85% of matter we don't know. It exists, and it has influence to the 15% we know. So this should mean something for our perception of realities and for our way how we work in science, in art, in politics, and in philosophy as well.
Thank you. There are here 3 more questions concerning creativity, which I think were answered in these answers. So there is another question from Dr. Katarakis, also a participant in RELOGIA. What may an incentive be to humanity to start addressing the real problems with soft skills instead of dealing with politics?
Well, I see politics is under quotation marks. I don't know quite sure what you mean with politics. I think most of what we are doing, what we are thinking, is kind of politics. So this is also a term which is narrowed down very much. And I wouldn't talk just about humanities. We all know the discussions, and it has been going on since at least 30 years, the crisis, the so-called crisis of the humanities. And despite all the discussions, sometimes I think we did not, or humanities did not really step out of the crisis, because they tend to draw back to this fragmentism of problems and not looking together the situation we have. And the reality is not existing just from humanities or from science or economics. Look at this young girl, Greta. What she did in just 9 months, scientists and politicians did not succeed in for decades. She brought up some awareness about what we need in this world. And she brought people in politics and at the universities not only to think how they could step into this kind of political topics and how they could find solutions by not only looking at the narrow discipline or subdiscipline, but working together with colleagues from other disciplines. I think this is the necessary way. Otherwise, we cannot solve the challenges we have.
Thank you. Due to our limited time, we continue with the next performance.
Your brain, your thoughts, your music. Performance 3. In-Volution. Connecting to the inner selves. Brain DJ. Francisco TEIXEIRA, MuArts, Neurofeedback. Lisbon, Portugal.
Hello. Hi, everyone. First of all, I want to thank Svetlana for inviting me to show my work. I will give a small presentation. I'm just waiting for the slides to explain how this technology works and what I am going to do. I will also showcase some previous work I have done with this technology, and then I will do a 2 minutes demo performance on myself controlling some visuals and some sounds with this brain-computer interface. Can you put the slides, please? And I think I need a pointer to change the slides. Does someone have the pointer? Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I can start talking before the slides. So my name is Francisco and I'm presenting brain-computer interface technology and neurofeedback. My presentation will be about the frontiers of human expression and how humans can communicate nowadays without using their bodies. They can communicate and they can create with brain-computer interaction and straightforward with information that comes from their brains. Do I have the slides? That would be helpful. So my company is a startup called MuArts. Mu is a brainwave that appears in the brain when you create an empathic relationship with someone. The mu wave is created by the mirror neurons. Every time, so this is the last slide. I will need the first one. Every time someone relates emotionally with someone, you're seeing a movie, you're crying, you can relate to the emotion of the other person and you feel sad too. That's the mirror neurons working, and when they work, they create a mu wave. Our company is called MuArts because we try to use art to create more empathy between people and between people that they don't have the right skills to communicate. So we try to use neurotechnology to change the frontiers of expression by creating intention mediated directly from the brain without needing to use the body. So let's talk about science, tech, and art. Science. This guy here is the main character of my talk, is the brain. What is the brain? The brain is biology, is chemistry, is anatomy, is electricity, is cognition, and in the end, it's behavior. My company only looks to the electricity that the brain creates while it's working. Every time there's a communication between neurons, there's electricity running through the axon of the neuron. As you can see in this movie, the electricity is created by ions, positively charged ions, that get inside of the axon, and then they charge the axon with positive charge, and the communication goes through the neuron. Let's talk about technology. What is this technology that I'm wearing today? It's an EEG, an electroencephalogram. An electroencephalogram is a device like this one. It's a clinical device, medical device. This one has 128 electrodes that can pick up in real time the electromagnetic activity of the human brain. This activity, we can only capture the activity or the cortical areas of the brain. There's many areas in the brain, but the only, and this is one of the limitations of this technology, the only information that we can pick up is from the cortical areas of the brain. When we pick up the information, we have this data, is raw data. If we don't have the right algorithms to decode this data, we cannot do anything with it. But if we use the right algorithms, like an FFT, a fast Fourier transform, we can divide this activity into frequency bands, and we can understand that each frequency band is related to certain types of mental states. So, for instance, the theta frequency band is related to sleep, to imagery, to daydreaming. If we go higher on the frequency and we have the alpha range, and between theta and alpha, that's the consciousness consciousness limit. So if you're in theta, you're sleeping. If you're in alpha, you're awakened. When you are working at alpha, it means that you are restful, but still awake. And then if you go to beta, it means that you have a higher activity. It means that you are performing a cognitive task, or you're anxious, or you have to take some uppers or some drugs. It's only ranging on the beta frequency range. So we can create a relation between low frequencies and low-level cognitive process or less consciousness or autonomous processes or even imagery, or if you go higher on the scale, is more related to high-level cognitive processes, more consciousness of the process and deliberated process and semantical process. If we pick up these frequencies and distribute the frequencies in topographic maps that are related to the neuroanatomy, so the areas of the brain and the different areas of the brain that have different functions. For instance, the frontal lobe is connected to executive process, to concentration, to intention. The temporal lobe is connected to memory, language. So looking at this guy here, and from this topographic map that has many activity on, let me see if I can help you. Yeah, that has many activity on the temporal lobes because it's on the beta range. Maybe I can guess that this person is or recalling a memory or is having a speech or language process. Now I will explain a little bit the metrics and the algorithms that I'm using to perform. We only use 2 metrics because, as I said, this technology has some limitations and is only capturing the cortex activation. We only use a metric that we call a rational conscious metric, that with training you can control the metric, that is on the frontal lobe, and we are looking to the beta range. So we know if someone is more focused or more concentrated, there's a little bit more activation on the beta frequency, and we can understand that that person is concentrating or focusing in some stimulus. The other metric is an unconscious, indirect metric of emotion that we call emotional engagement. So, as you can see in the slide, the frontal left hemisphere that is related to rational thinking and so on is also responsible for processing positive emotions. On the other side, the right frontal hemisphere is responsible to process negative emotions. So we call this frontal asymmetry an indirect metric of emotional engagement. That is more of a withdrawal, a motivational withdrawal and motivational approach indirect metric, because most of the emotional processing happens subcortically, that is on the limbic system. So with all of this science and technology, maybe we can say that the brain nowadays have another layer of organization, that is the technological layer. We use a device like this, that is interaction muse, with 3 sensors in the frontal lobe and 2 sensors on the temporal lobe. We also use this device that MuArts, my company, created, that is a hat with 1 sensor on the frontal lobe, or this one, that is all brain 19 electrodes, that has electrodes in all areas of the brain. So let's talk a little bit about art. How can we do art with this technology? I will show you some use cases in different areas, like music. We have made many projects with music, next slide, thanks, with Music Tech Fest, like this one. Rika, she's a blind folk Finnish singer, and she was performing while singing and controlling the volume of some samples with the concentration focus metric. Because she was blind, she was one of the first persons that I saw without many training to quickly start controlling very easily the up and down of the concentration. There's many theories about that. Maybe it's because she's using the visual cortex as an audio processing, because she doesn't see, so she can use that to compensate. And now every time she had the audio feedback of her own brain with the samples, she could control easily. Another project, this one, it was with Gadi. He was controlling a modular synthesizer directly with the brain, with the concentration metric. So modular pure oscillator sound will be modulated by him with the power of concentration and focus. In-Volution. So this is a project where DJs, they play with the same metric and they are controlling the visuals on the room they are playing and some sounds and effects of the DJ set that they are doing with this device and that metric. This is a small video as an example. So she's controlling the morphology of the light on the back and the pace of the sound on the back. Smart fashion. This is a very interesting area and project called Vision Quest that I've developed with Johanna here. So we developed this cloth line where the headset, that is this hat, is capturing the data, and then the skirt or other pieces of clothing change color or patterns according to the concentration and according to the emotional engagement metric. I have another video here. The sound of this video is a bit high. Okay. Audiovisual performances. One example is this one brain in box. So on this performance, a writer he doesn't need to use the hand anymore. So he can write with his thoughts. So what's the rationale behind this? We divided the concentration metric up to 7 levels, and we recorded phrases. Every time the writer concentrates up to the first level, one phrase is projected. Every time he concentrates to the second level, another phrase is projected. The sounds and the lights is mediated by the emotional engagement metric that he cannot control consciously. As you can see, some phrases are being projected, but every time, if you see here, it will appear as scrambled letters. That means that he didn't reach the threshold that he needs to reach to achieve the second or the third phrase to be projected. Interactive experiences. So instead of using this technology with a performer, we can use with people, and people can interact with the technology. This project is Synchronica, a project we did related to Kelly's project, where the data of the music of the spheres we plotted, and then what was controlling the amount of data of the plot, of the amount of ears being plotted, was the concentration of Luis in this case. So you see, every time he goes up on the scale, there's more data being plotted on the screen. Taste discovery. This one is very interesting. So, sorry, back. We use the same concept, same rationale, while people are drinking. Because the mouth is one of the senses that we have, the taste, that is quickly being processed by our emotional brain and then by our frontal cortex that mediates all the emotions. We can pick up changes on the emotional engagement metric, and then those changes controls a painting, controls an immersive room around the dinner table, as people understand the difference between the different things that they are eating and the reaction they have to those things. This is an example how the visuals change. So as you see, every time there's a peak on the emotional engagement metric, the picture changes a little bit as an indicator that there's been variations on the metric. So when we translate science tech into art, we can achieve transformation. How do you achieve transformation? Apart of being an entrepreneur and a scientist, my background is in psychology. So I'm a clinical psychologist, and I run 2 clinics where we do real-time neurofeedback. We apply this technology to retrieve this information to the patients so they can treat some symptoms like anxiety, impulsivity. I will give you an example how the clinic works. It's the same rationale. But before doing the neurofeedback, we do an exam called quantitative electroencephalogram. So we compare to a database the different areas of our patient to understand if they are more activated or less activated and if they correlate to symptoms. And then we know which area of the brain we have to give feedback or not every time that area is working in a more equilibrium state. So as you saw on this video, the visuals only stop when that area specifically is working in a better way. Tomorrow I will give a workshop on this, so you can try this use case with a headset and try to relax, use breath work strategies to control the visuals and the sound, and then guide yourself into meditation. So this is an example of the software I'm using. Svet is saying that I have to worry. I will go straight forward to the performance. Okay, this is not moving. Okay, I want to finish with this, that I believe that science, tech, and art have to pair with transformation if you want to achieve and extract more value of this collaboration of these 3 different areas. Now I will showcase you how this technology works in 2 seconds, and then you can all go to your break. Sorry about that. So as you can see, I don't know if you're seeing already. Just have to do one thing. It's already on the screen. I'm doing that now. Is it extended? Okay, just a second. I'm going to the sound. I think the sound was okay already. No sound. I'm not playing it. Are you receiving? Okay, it's full screen. Oh, I have to go there. Okay. Let me just do one thing. Okay. So this is. I think you have to. Okay. You can see here. This yellow graph is the emotional engagement metric that you cannot control consciously, but the metric is there. You're always processing positively, withdrawal or approach processing to the stimulus you are interacting. Here on the right side, and this is the arousal and activation of my frontal lobe. This one is the one I will try to use to control the sounds and the visuals that are on in real time. So every time the graph drops, the visual drops.
The mind.
Now I will try to go up.
It's our link to consciousness, our thoughts, and as a byproduct, the expression of our soul. that free and unfettered aspect of being human that no one else has jurisdiction over. But as easily as the mind expresses the depths within, it remains easily lured into a false reality where thoughts become the object of attention and the source becomes forgotten.
So every time I
It is
focus,
here where some scientists and
open
philosophers
and the sound
believe we have
changes.
lost the true reality and in turn become products of our environment and culture. It wasn't until scientific study partnered with ancient rituals that they discovered that there might be a way to reconnect the soul and the mind more quickly and intimately. But are these just escapist tools? Or could they actually be a cure for the common human issue on this planet, the sleeping mind?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Music, instrument. Music, instrument, voice, balance. Performance 4.
Good evening. My name is Laura Markova. I play violin in the National Music School of Sofia, Bulgaria. Next performer's name is Kai Orlinov. We're both with the same teacher, Bulgorodna Taneva. I will play for you Paganini 11th Caprice, and Kai will play Solo Rhapsody for violin by Bulgarian composer Petar Hristoskov.
Добър ден на всички.
Hello everyone. It's a real honor and a pleasure to be part of this venue, and we've got the opportunity to do a song that we wrote. It's for all of you, it's dedicated to RELOGIA, and I'd like to thank Alexander Georgiev, without whom this wouldn't have happened, and to Tsvetana, who is our inspiration today. Thank you for being here.
Песента се казва Равновесие.
This is called Equilibrium. This is Konstantin Kochev on the violin.
Дай ми за решения правилни, мисълта ми в молитва лезе, любовта не се изпитва, живее се, равновесие. Дай ми за решения правилни, мисълта ми в молитва лезе, любовта не се изпитва, живее се, приятел сме се и ме замеря с лъчи. Поглеждаме открито, но мълчи и отдалеч си личи. През какво сме минали, капчица разбиране ме докосва винаги. Летът нежно стапя се и не думи ще помогнат примери. Ей, спирам, потапям се и течението ме носи. Отговори идват без зададени въпроси. И не кой си представяш, че си, а кой си. И течението ме носи. Отговори идват без зададени въпроси. И не кой си представяш, че си, а кой си. А кой си. Любовта не се изпитва, живее се, равновесие. vivesse. And well, I stayed too long in doubt, but finally I'm born out. My destiny found me. My destiny found me. My destiny found me. My destiny found me. Found me.
Thank you. Konstantin Kochev, thank you. Michaela.
We will continue with our fourth and last trialogue after a 10 minutes break. Thank you.